And for the 20th time ever, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reviewing Network Live. And this week we have a full episode. It's not just 1 week where I'm just doing the weekend box office and the recommendations, and then we're done. It's going to be a full-length episode this week. We have some stories to get to and some things that I was going to talk about last week, but I think I might as well talk about them here this week. So let's not waste any more time. Let's just get right to it. We got to do the disclaimer first. The Reviewing Network Live is a weekly stream of consciousness conversation recording session where I sit down with you guys. We talk about things that happened the previous week before, news stories, things I find interesting that I feel like could be worth talking about, that type of stuff. Now, these are longer than my usual reviews, and they're also, for the most part, unedited. So there is going to be some foul language here, so if you're offended by that, you might want to step away. But if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and let's begin the conversation. And as always, we're going to start with the weekend box office. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm looking at Box Office Mojo's box office weekend charts for this week, and it looks really weird. I actually took pictures earlier in the day and put them up on social media so you can see what I'm talking about here. You'll notice that the number one movie, the real number one movie this week, is nowhere to be found. But you have to go to the bottom of the page to see it. And I'm not going to say what it is right now, but I'm probably going to show you the pictures anyway. But we'll get to that in just a moment. But just a heads up, this weekend box office is going to be very weird looking compared to what it usually is, because the number one movie clearly is at the bottom of the chart here. But so yeah, this is going to be a little bit harder for me to navigate than usual, because I have to basically just go 5, 4, 3, and 2, and then realize that the number one movie is at the bottom of this list. So anyway, number 5 on this list is Migration, which still hanging in there, $6.1 million after 4 weeks, $85.7 million. We are in Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, and if you take in Monday's numbers, the projected numbers, this is actually going to be at number 4, ahead of the number 4 film at $8.3 million with $87.8 million. So, of course, obviously it's a family film. It's going to do better than what the number 4 film is, which is Anyone But You, which had the distinct honor of making my bottom 10 list for 2023. I did my worst movies of 2023 video. If you want to go check that out, it's over on the other channel. I'll put a link to it in the corner. But Anyone But You, the sleeper hit of the year, quite literally, because this thing has been hanging around for the last couple of weeks. $7 million for the 3-day weekend, only dropping 29% from last week. $55.1 million from the 3-day weekend totals. 4-day totals up to $56.4 million. But for a movie that cost $25 million and opened to a very small, less than $8 million, I think it was. Was it? Yeah, about between $6 and $8 million. That's still really low for this movie. It has held on pretty well. $79.2 million worldwide. And more power to him, because I really did not see what everybody else saw in this movie. I thought this was a terrible film. But we talked about this one long enough. So let's go ahead and get to the number 3 film. Finally dropping off after 4 weeks, we have Wonka, which brought in $8.4 million, dropping 40% from last week to $176.2 million. If you count Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, it's up to close to $11 million, $178.6 million. I've talked about that one long enough as well, but let's go ahead and get into some of the new releases that we have this week. We have 2 this week, even though Box Office Mojo right now clearly is not showing that. The number 2 film this week is David Ayer's new film, The Beekeeper, with Jason Statham, which, if you didn't see the trailers for this, basically the storyline is that you have Jason Statham as this former operative of a powerful he's a powerful former operative, and he's going after this powerful and clandestine organization who's scamming people. And Jason Statham is in it, directed by David Ayer, who gave us Suicide Squad and End of Watch. And the trailers did a good job of selling this for a movie that is basically an old school action thriller. I haven't seen the movie, but I've heard a lot of people say it delivers what the trailer promises of an old school action thriller, and it did pretty well. $16.8 million for the 3-day weekend. If you count Monday's totals, it's going to be $19.2 million, which this movie did not look like it had a high budget to it, despite the fact it had David Ayer on there. Let me just see just to be confirming that it is. The budget's not on Wikipedia. I thought it would be on there, but hey, close to $20 million for a movie from an upstart studio like Amazon MGM. I mean, I know MGM's been around for a while, but for Amazon, they're still relatively new into the studio game, but hey, more power to them. They did a pretty good job of handling this movie's opening weekends overall. But next week, the movie's success overall, I don't know if it's going to have a long-lasting power, but I can't imagine this is that cheap. This is that high-priced of a movie. If it is, then maybe we shouldn't be celebrating this. But $20 million in 4 days, really not a bad opening for this particular film. I'm definitely going to go check it out some point this week. I'm very curious about that one. I did get to see the number one movie that we're going to be talking about here. I haven't done a review for it yet because I've been doing the worst of 2023 this week. And so we'll save that for next week's episode talking about the movies. But the number one movie this week, and the movie that is for some reason at the bottom of this top 10 this week, the charts actually, not the bottom of the top 10, and that is Mean Girls, the Broadway musical adaptation of the classic movie, which Paramount did not even bother to sell this as a musical at all, because for some reason people think musicals are the selling point, which does not make a whole lot of sense. But after hearing what a lot of people said this weekend, don't be surprised if you think that. But now it's funny because I'm looking at the weekend box office here. So on the 4-day Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, this movie is at 24th on the box office list. $32,000. It says it's in 3,791 theaters, which clearly signifies it's a wide release. Per screen average, $8. $32,000. The way that they put this on Box Office Mojo, you would think that this movie bombed completely. And if you look at the regular 3-day numbers, it's at $28,000. The average is $7. And it's at 27th overall when you add in all the other movies here. But it made $32 million in total. I did remember seeing that. $28 million for the 3-day weekend, $32 million for the 4-day weekend. With the budget on this really not that high at all, $36 million, which I don't know. Which seems like a lot compared to the original film. It's actually double what the original film did. I got to see it yesterday, and I will tell you this. This is one of the contenders for one of the worst movies of 2024 already. I mean, not because the movie is bad per se, but it's just, it feels really pointless. Like, it's a musical, it's an adaptation of the musical that this is based off of. And the movie Paramount didn't do a good job selling the musical aspect of it because they were so afraid it wasn't going to do that. Well, look at Wonka. Look at how well that's doing. And The Color Purple, sadly, is not doing well, even though that movie is pretty amazing. Like, I don't get what the appeal is of hiding the fact that this is a musical that was to affect people. Like, but then again, there are videos going out there online this weekend where people were in the theater watching Mean Girls, had no idea it was a musical, and there was one in particular that I thought was kind of amusing. It was like the scene where the Cade character, played here by Angourie Rice from the Spider-Man movies, she's about to go, she bursts into song, and everybody in the theater just goes like, oh, like they had no idea this was a musical. And I can only think to myself that as soon as they realized that the theater had the doors all locked up, it's just like, you're trapped in here with me, like you're gonna sit through the rest of this movie. Like people just trying to get out of the movie theater. Let me out, I didn't know it was a musical. Like, that's all I kept thinking about whenever I saw those videos. But I guess to the movie's credit, it's not bad per se. I would put it on a worst of the year list mostly because it just feels like a pointless movie. It feels like there's nothing about this movie that deserves to be put on a big screen like this, and it feels more obnoxious compared to the original film. Like, the comedy is more obnoxious and in your face, and like everybody's trying way too hard. Too many good people, talented people in this movie. I talked about Angourie Rice, Busy Phillips, Moana is in this movie, Aaliyah Carvalho, John Hamm's also in here, Tina Fey, Tim Meadows. Just, a lot of the same people that were mostly involved in the original film are involved in this one as well. But I don't know. To me, it's not a bad movie per se. It's just a movie that I feel is rather pointless. Just the fact that they didn't really do a good job of distancing this movie compared to the other film, except this one's more obnoxious because it is a musical than the original film is. I don't know. It's going to be one of those weird ones. It's like when I put Batman v Superman on as the worst film of 2016. Not because the movie itself is an all-around disaster, which it's not a good movie by any means, but it had aspects to it that I did like about it. But it just reminded me so much of this generation's Phantom Menace, and I had no choice but to put that in as my least favorite movie of 2016. Hopefully, this will not be the worst movie of 2024. And considering that I also saw Night Swim, that's probably a given, because Night Swim is, oh god, that was a mess. That was a mess on so many levels. But yeah, that movie will probably be in the top worst movies of 2024 in general, even though the year has just begun. I've already seen 3 movies that can make my bottom 10 list for the worst movies of 2024, and that's depressing to think about that. We're not even 2 weeks in, and a third of my list is already filled with movies that I'm probably going to put in there. But so yeah, that's the top 10, the top 5. So there were some other new releases this week. Probably the most notorious flop of all was The Book of Clarence, which I saw a couple of the trailers for this. It did not look that good. Not to say that it didn't look good to me, but it didn't feel like a film that had a good idea of how to sell itself. This is a $40 million budgeted film. It only brought in $2.6 million after 4 weeks, which is not a good opening whatsoever. And the reviews for this aren't bad either. In fact, some people are comparing it to something like, a black equivalent to Monty Python's The Life of Brian, which that's a classic comedy in a number of different ways. So, who knows? Maybe this is actually good. Maybe it's just bad timing to release this film. I feel like maybe if you put this out on a lesser weekend instead of this particular weekend where there's so many other movies that people will go and see, maybe it could have done better. But I don't know. I said before I thought it was going to look terrible, but I don't know. Maybe it is actually good. I've seen the trailers for it. It looks promising, but it's not something that makes me really want to get out there and go see it. But then again, that's one I'll probably wait for when it comes out on physical media to check out. And another one of the more notable releases was Disney and Pixar releasing some of the Disney Plus movies they put out during COVID on the big screen. Soul did not start off well at all. Brought in only $429,000 for the 3-day weekend. 4 days, only $500,000 for the worldwide gross for this, since it was already opening up in other places worldwide during the pandemic, was $121 million. Less than $300, about a little more than $300 per screen average. Maybe if you marketed a little bit more instead of just having those trailers that kept showing up on Disney movies, maybe you could have had a bigger audience for this, because I feel like people should see Soul and Turning Red and Luca on a big screen, that they have the opportunity to do that. But again, maybe it's just because they're all on Disney Plus already and nobody really wanted to go out and see them, which kind of is a shame. But again, maybe if you sold the movie better instead of having that one trailer promoting all 3 movies, maybe you could have had something there. But I hope it doesn't mean that Turning Red and Luca don't get big screen treatments, because I do want to see those movies on a big screen. And Turning Red, I think, comes out in February, and then Luca comes out in March. So I'm still looking forward to checking both of those out. It was nice to see Soul on the big screen yesterday too. It was like that. Those are where those movies should be at. I know it was during the pandemic. I know you have to get content out there, but releasing those movies on straight to Disney Plus probably was the biggest mistake Disney could do at that point. And it's been a rough stretch since then. Plus, I get why they do it. They don't have anything else coming out until this summer, so they got to fill the release dates there somehow. But could have put a little more effort into the marketing there, guys. But speaking of next weekend, not really a whole lot opening up. The only big thing I see is ISS, which it's a space movie, but the only thing I know about it is that it plays that great Scorpion song, The Wind of Change, in the trailers, and that's about all I know about that one. But this one's probably not going to get re-released around here, but I would love to see One from the Heart be put on the big screen again. I see the Francis Ford Coppola movie, criminally underrated movie with Terry Garr in it, and also Frederick Forrest. Also has Raul Julia, Natasha Kinski, Lanny Kazan, Harry Dean Stanton. It's one of Francis Ford Coppola's most underrated movies that was sadly a flop at the box office back in 1982, and I see it's getting a re-release with a 4K release coming up on physical media this year. And I would love to see this movie on a big screen, but it's definitely not going to be playing out in my neck of the woods. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that 4K restoration of this. Great movie, great underrated Coppola film. So that's the weekend box office. So with that said, it's time to head into some story time. So one of the big stories to start the year off is that the list of the associates of Jeffrey Epstein, who of course was the former financier arrested of sex trafficking claims charges in 2019, their list came out not too long ago, and there were a lot of different names on there, notable names from both ends of the spectrum, political, celebrity, you name it. There were a lot of notable names on there. And the week after that list came out, Aaron Rodgers, who, hasn't done a whole lot for obvious reasons. He gets injured on the first night of the regular season, just joins the New York Jets, does nothing for most of the season except to try to help the Jets and Zach Wilson get by the season. And he's a regular guest on the Pat McAfee show, which led into this controversial that stands for this. What I want to say here, this controversy that's been going on between Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Kimmel. And I've got this website here, Biography, who kind of details everything that's going on here. And basically what happens is that Rodgers suggested on an episode of the Pat McAfee show, which was the day after New Year's, that Jimmy Kimmel is connected to the list of associates of Jeffrey Epstein. Rodgers didn't mention a reason or evidence to support linking Kimmel to the list, and the 56-year-old comedian hasn't appeared in the documents that have been released. So making false claims like that is a pretty big deal. I mean, there's no reason to go on TV and say stuff like that, except you're trying to create controversy here. But as it says, not surprisingly, the comments angered Kimmel, who said in the social media post he would take Rodgers to court and if he continued to make statements that are potentially defamatory. These eye-opening interactions mark the escalation of a spat that, although relatively lighthearted prior to the incident, have been ongoing for years between the athlete and TV personality. And they go on to talk about the list in question. It refers to a collection of documents related to a defamation suit against Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's former associate and girlfriend, that a judge ordered to be unsealed after January 1st. The process received plenty of attention in recent weeks as the documents were suspected to reveal the names of alleged co-conspirators, victims, and witnesses pertaining to Epstein's charges. Epstein was found dead in a prison cell in August 2019 before standing trial. His death was ruled as a suicide. And we don't have to really go into that aspect here. According to CBS News, 3 sets of documents have been released. A number of high-profile names have appeared in connection to Epstein. Guys like, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, a lot of notable names in particular. The list, like I said, I'm not going to go too much in that because we're here to just talk about what's going on between Kimmel and Rodgers. A number of high-profile names have appeared in connection to Epstein, but in a non-criminal manner, Kimmel's name wasn't included in any of the documents. Rodgers' comments came before any documents were made public. A recurring guest on McAfee's podcast, he began discussing the anticipated release with McAfee and co-host AJ Hawk, which I'm pretty sure the people who are watching the Pat McAfee show do not really care about what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein, unless they're also watching Fox News. But they're there to watch the sports aspect of the show. Like, unless it's something really, really significant that's going to change the entire world in general, I don't think there's real reason to talk about that. But they talked about it on this episode. I think this is Rodgers saying this. There's a lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, that are really hoping that the list doesn't come out. I'll tell you what, if the list comes out, I will definitely be popping some sort of bottle. I mean, this would be like me saying that I want something horribly bad to happen to Taylor Swift. I may not like Taylor Swift as a person or as a celebrity, but I don't want to see them on something on there where like their whole career can get to. Who am I kidding? I kind of want to do that. I don't want to see him get like murdered in any way, shape, or form. I should probably say that, or I wouldn't be saying stuff like this about somebody who clearly has nothing to do with what's going on with the Epstein thing, and you're just trying to create a controversy for no reason whatsoever. That's the whole point I'm trying to make here. And if I'm Jimmy Kimmel, I'd be more than upset about this. And sure enough, not too long after that, Kimmel vehemently denied any connection to Epstein and called Rodgers a soft-brained wacko for his comments. I've not met, flown with, visited, or had any connections whatsoever with Epstein, nor will you find my name on any list. Your reckless words put my family in danger. Keep it up and we will debate the facts further in court. So, yeah, and Jimmy Kimmel's got that Disney money too, so he could take Aaron Rodgers to court easily. So if Kimmel really wanted to sue him for defamation of character, I feel like he could easily do just that. But anyway, So Monday's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live comes up, and during the opening monologue, he talks about pretty much the same thing. The list did come out, and of course my name wasn't on it, and isn't on it, and won't ever be on it. I don't know Jeffrey Epstein. I never met Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not on the list. I'm not on a plane or on an island or anything ever. And he later called Rodgers a hamster-brained man. Kimmel, who acknowledged that he has poked fun at the quarterback in the past, further explained that any of the jokes on his show are fact-checked and sourced for accuracy. When I do get something wrong, which happens on rare occasions, you know what I do, I apologize for it, which is what Aaron Rodgers should do, which is what a decent person would do, but I bet he won't. If he does, you know what I'll do. I'll accept his apology and move on. And so, of course, the Pat McAfee show is now on ESPN, a property of Disney and ABC, which also broadcasts Jimmy Kimmel Live. And ESPN spokesperson said Friday that Rodgers made a dumb and factually inaccurate joke about Jimmy Kimmel. It should never, ever happen. So McAfee first addressed the controversy on the January 3rd episode of the podcast and expressed hope that Rodgers and Kimmel could settle this rift without going to court. Pat McAfee said, I can see exactly where Jimmy Kimmel felt the way he felt, especially with his position, but I think Aaron was just trying to talk shit. Now, did it go too far in a lot of people's minds? Jimmy Kimmel certainly said that was the case. Some things, obviously, people get very pissed off, especially when they're that serious allegations, so we apologize for being part of it. So Rodgers was back on the podcast Tuesday, hours after Kimmel's scathing monologue, and didn't offer an apology to the TV host. Instead, he said his comments were misinterpreted and that he wasn't trying to instigate Kimmel with involving any criminal activity. I'm not stupid enough to accuse you of that with absolutely zero evidence, concrete evidence. That's ridiculous. Well, you pretty much did that. I mean, you literally said on your show, on the day before the thing came out, you literally said, there's a lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, that are really hoping the list doesn't come out. I'll tell you what, if that list comes out, I definitely will be popping some sort of bottle. And now, a couple days later, you're just like, I'm not stupid enough to accuse you of that with absolutely zero evidence, concrete evidence. That's ridiculous. Just shut up, dude. Like, seriously. Like, that's something that's just like, you're not really sorry. You're sorry you got caught by saying something stupid. That's pretty much what happened. And after the appearance drew even more attention to the spat, McAfee announced on the show Wednesday that Rodgers won't appear again throughout the rest of the NFL season. We live in a country that has freedom of speech, but you're also going to have to deal with the consequences of your freedom of speech. So what I'm saying is we're giving a lot of people who have been waiting for the show to fail a lot of ammo and things to attack us for over the last week. And I'm pumped that this is no longer going to be every single Wednesday of my life, which it has been for the last few weeks. Which is funny because because the whole thing was, Pat McAfee said, hey, Aaron Rodgers is off our show this season. Season's pretty much over, so he's basically saying that, hey, he'll be back on at some point. He's going to be back on at some point during the season, just at some point next season. Probably what's really is going to happen, but that's not where. But this story doesn't end there because on Thursday, guess who happened to show up on the show? You would not believe this, but take a listen to this.
About massive names being, amicably departed from two teams at a very, very high level. Is a four-time NFL MVP and a man who is a Super Bowl champion. Ladies and gentlemen, the last human that Bill Belichick talked to on the field as the New England Patriots head coach, Aaron Rodgers. Yeah.
So, yeah. That banishment of Aaron Rodgers after what happened lasted only one day because the very next day, he was back on the Pat McAfee show as if nothing had happened. And, okay, that day was a big news story, and Aaron Rodgers actually happened to be at the center of one of those big news stories that we're going to get into later on. But still, after putting out that big of a press statement and saying Aaron Rodgers is no longer on the show this season, to have him come back the very next day, I hadn't heard anything about like a major rift between ESPN and the Pat McAfee show, but I don't know if it's just the Pat McAfee show doing this or the fact that ESPN's basically saying that Aaron Rodgers is banned, but I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of contradictions going on around here, and needless to say, I think this is going to get more and more interesting the more times Rodgers appears on the show, because because if this is any indication, he's not going away from the show anytime soon. And I don't know, like, look, I have a lot of respect for Aaron Rodgers. I thought he was a great quarterback for Green Bay. I think he's better than Tom Brady was. That's a controversial statement for so many different reasons because everyone likes to consider Tom Brady to be the GOAT, but I'm not that type of person. But I don't know. It's like I still have a lot of respect for Aaron Rodgers for what he did on the field, but off the field, man, this feels like it's going to get more and more uncomfortable for both sides of this, for him and Disney in general, because you're dealing with Jimmy Kimmel, you're dealing with Pat McAfee. I just say buckle up, because I feel like this is not going to be the last time we'll be talking about this anytime soon. But with that said, let's go ahead and try to move on to some other movie-related news, because we had one interesting movie-related story that came out this week about Star Wars. So a while back, we talked about how Dave Filoni became the new chief creative officer at Lucasfilm, and they're working on a slate of different Star Wars movies coming up, and we got our first big announcement. This is on Tuesday, and it's an interesting choice that they've gone with here for the first under the new Filoni regime. The Mandalorian and Grogu. Baby Yoda is coming to the big screen. A new film to be directed by the Mandalorian creator Jon Favreau is a go at Lucasfilm, and is expected to film later this year. This comes from The Hollywood Reporter, where I'm getting this story from. Favreau, Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, and Chief Creative Officer Dave Filoni will produce the feature, which the studio says will be the first Star Wars movie to go into production since 2019's The Rise of Skywalker. There have been some speculation that a film starring Daisy Ridley would be the first out of the gate, but it appears that project will be taking longer to hit hyperspace. Favreau said, "I have longed to tell stories set in the rich world that George Lucas created. The prospect of bringing the Mandalorian and his apprentice Grogu to the big screen is extremely exciting," which I see this as not a bad decision. I mean, this is a character that has, in the last 4 or 5 years since he came into the picture, has been one of the most significant things to come from Star Wars under Disney. I mean, he's become a marketing machine. There's toys everywhere. There's always different things for the holiday season with him involved. I mean, this is a character that has become a pop culture phenomenon, pretty much. I find it pretty interesting, though, that Pedro Pascal, who plays the Mandalorian, is not officially confirmed to return for this, which I would be surprised if he wasn't back for this. But I mean, then again, he's pretty busy. I mean, he's got The Last of Us. He's reportedly going to be Mr. Fantastic in Fantastic Four, and they want to try to get this out for next Christmas, 2025. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that's pretty interesting that he's not back for this. He's not signed on for this just yet. I mean, we'll see what happens there. But going back to the article here, the development potentially marks a turning point of the page for the Lucasfilm, which has struggled to articulate a vision for what Star Wars should be on the big screen. Developing multiple properties that never made it to the finish line, but last year at Star Wars Celebration in London, the Disney-owned studios revealed plans for 3 projects that seem to be moving along, including Ridley's. Others is a big screen movie directed by Filoni, which is expected to feature characters from the Disney Plus show, and then there's another set in the distant past from James Mangold, though that project is the furthest away in terms of becoming a reality. Tuesday's news further solidifies Favreau and Filoni as the most important writer and directors in the Star Wars galaxy. And I mean, they got 2 really good minds to work on this, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. I feel like these could be the guys that can turn the Star Wars universe around in Disney. Like I said before, I've liked a lot of what Star Wars has been like under Disney. I've liked the sequel trilogy. I like The Force Awakens. I like Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker is not a great film, but then again, it's mostly because I still think the fans kind of ruined that thanks to The Last Jedi. But I've liked the TV shows. I've liked what most of the stuff they've done in the Star Wars universe ever since Disney bought them. So I'm more than optimistic to see what they can do with this. I'm really excited to see what they do with this whole thing. And like I said, it's going to be really cool to see Grogu and the Mandalorian on the big screen for the first time ever. That should be something that should be really a ton of fun to watch. And I have no doubt this will probably do very well if this actually does make it to the finish line in time. I think it's going to be Christmas 25 release. That's what they're saying, because there's an untitled date for that one. So more than likely, this will probably be the first of these 3 films that they're talking about that gets pushed out there. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they do with that one. But with that said, let's move on to Black Monday. And for those of you out there that don't know what Black Monday is, of course, that is the day after the NFL regular season comes to an end. And that's when the teams that have had really bad seasons or have just had enough of their coaches basically say, they give them the pink slip and tell them to get the hell out of here and we're moving on from you. And so far, we've had three. Before the season ended, we had three already in the books. We had Josh McDaniels, who got fired on Halloween after his time with the Raiders. We then had Frank Reich get fired the weekend after Thanksgiving, and then not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, we had Brandon Staley get fired after he got blown out 63-21 to the Las Vegas Raiders. And so those are the three that we already know. That's three right off the bat. And the day hadn't even finished on the West Coast when we got the first official firing for Black Monday, and that was when Arthur Smith got fired from the Atlanta Falcons. I literally saw it. It was 12:02 a.m. on Monday morning, last late Sunday night, early Monday morning, like around 12:02 a.m. in the morning. I looked on Twitter and it says Atlanta Falcons have fired Arthur Smith. Like, they didn't wait until the day had even begun to fire him. But then again, when the last thing you see of Arthur Smith is him telling Dennis Allen what a bitch move it was to go for the touchdown and is in garbage time, and that did not look like a good image for him. But then again, his whole career was not a good image for him. Think about what the Atlanta Falcons had over the last couple of years. They drafted the best tight end from 2021, Kyle Pitts. They drafted one of the best wide receivers in Drake London in the first round. They drafted the best running back in the first round in Bijan Robinson. He didn't know how to handle those players. Like, that's 3 first-round talents, and you're not using them at all. You're using scrubs you're using scrub players or players that are beneath them. Like, you drafted them with a first-round pick. You draft these players with the first-round pick to get them out there as soon as possible. And on top of that, players were showing up in injury reports that did not have injuries beforehand. Like, Bijan Robinson was one of the big examples. Like, there was a game, I think it was against, I can't remember who it was against. I think it was maybe against Jacksonville, or let me double check just to make sure. So basically, in Week 7, Arthur Smith failed to disclose an injury to Bijan Robinson, and because of that, he basically there was $100,000 in fines imposed on the Falcons and coach Arthur Smith. And he played in that game, but Robinson had limited snaps and only 1 touch, his lowest amount of the year at that point. You can't be putting players on there that don't have real injury, that are more injured than you let on before. And yeah, $100,000 in fines imposed. Just think about that. Just think about the ramifications of that. So, not surprising that he's gone. So, whoever's going to get this Falcons team is going to get a team that has players ready to go. There is a good roster there in Atlanta. You just got to get the right guy to run the show, and you might need to get a new quarterback too, because I don't know if Desmond Ridder is your answer for the future. So the next one was not really that much of a surprise either. Ron Rivera gets fired by the Washington Commanders. You know, he probably should have been fired last year after he didn't realize that if he lost to Cleveland, his team would be out of the playoffs altogether. No joke, when they played the Cleveland Browns in the second to last game of the season, someone asked him about the possibility of getting eliminated in the playoffs, and he said, well, I didn't know we can get eliminated. It's just like, how long have you been a head coach and you can't figure out that you have to, is that you basically just get admitted to the world. You have no idea when you're going to be on the cusp of elimination, and maybe you should tell you guys, hey, we could be eliminated today, so you might want to play your best game ever. It's just like, well, I didn't know we could do that. It's just like, he shouldn't have been fired from that. But no, keep him around for the year. And last year was a big cluster. Like, even with Eric Bieniemy there, after what he did in Kansas City, it felt like he was non-existent in Washington, because yeah, he had those brief flashes when the Commanders were actually looking like a good team, but they were very few and far between. And they were getting embarrassed on national television badly. Like on Thanksgiving Day against the Cowboys is one of the big games that come to mind pretty quickly. And it's like, don't get rid of the offensive coordinator that called the plays for that game. No, get rid of the defensive coordinator, because he has to be the scapegoat here. Don't get rid of the head coach. Don't start a new. Just let Ron Rivera continue to go out on his own. And yeah, if I'm Ron Rivera, I would probably just step aside from coaching for a little bit, because man, Washington right now, it's gonna get better because Dan Snyder's no longer there. I'm very curious to see how they'll go from there. They can start anew. They have a new head coach. They've got the second overall pick. So whoever gets the first quarterback at the number 1 pick, whether it will still be Chicago or not, it'll be better. It should mean better things for the Commanders. I do have high hopes of them going forward. Now we get to some of the surprises. I mean, Mike Vrabel getting fired from Tennessee was a pretty big shocker. I mean, yeah, they've struggled the second half of his tenure, but during the first couple years of his run, 2 AFC South Division titles, you got all the way to the AFC Championship game in 2019, and then you lose to Kansas City. I mean, you get so close to the Super Bowl. I don't know if this was a good call or not. I mean, yeah, Derrick Henry's probably gone. The Titans probably have to figure out where they're going to go. Do they really do believe in Will Levis? Do they stick with the other quarterbacks they drafted? Did Malik Willis? Are they going to stick with Ryan Tannehill? Probably not. But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see which direction they go there. But with Mike Vrabel leaving, many people thought, okay, he's going to go to New England because Bill Belichick's going to announce that he's moving on. And there was a veteran coach the following day that did announce he was moving on, and basically kind of changed everything. And it was actually on the opposite side of the where the New England Patriots was. It's all the way in Seattle. Who would have thought Pete Carroll would be gone after 14 years? I mean, his team almost made the playoffs this year at the final game of the regular season. Just didn't get the help he needed to get in. But no, Carroll was fired after 14 years. He's basically being reassigned, kind of in the same position that Bruce Arians was when he left the head coaching position at Tampa Bay. He's in the front office now. And so that leaves a lot of questions to where the Seattle Seahawks go from there. Like, their defense has been very strong. Was very strong during their Super Bowl run. The offense was running on all cylinders when Russell Wilson is there and Marshawn Lynch. It seems like they're going back to more of an offensive line area, and it makes you wonder, is Geno Smith part of that future for them? It's like, is he going to be the guy for the future? Did they trot out Drew Lock, who they got in the Denver trade? It's going to be very interesting to see which direction they go. I keep hearing they might go to Dan Quinn, who was the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks when of course they had Marshawn Lynch at the front there, and they should have ran it in for the touchdown instead of throwing it, causing you to lose the Super Bowl and potential dynasty. But that's a whole other story altogether. But I could see Dan Quinn fitting into that role. But then again, it just depends on where they go from here in terms of which direction they go, in terms of what their future should be. Should they focus more on the defense again, or should they focus on the offense more? Could be Dan Quinn. Could be maybe Kellen Moore from the Chargers. Who knows what's going to happen with him, because that was one of the big things. He went over to the Chargers hoping he could do the same thing that he did with Prescott and the Cowboys, but unfortunately that never transpired. We'll get to the Chargers in just a moment, but then we finally get to the longtime coach who's retiring after so many years, and it was a protege with one of the coaches we're about to talk about here, and that's of course Nick Saban with Alabama. Oh yeah, that's right. We'll step away from the NFL to talk about this. Nick Saban's gone to Alabama. Who would have thought we'd see that coming after all these years? I mean, 7 championships, 6 of them with Alabama, 1 with LSU. And who they replace him with? The guy who lost out on the national championship against Michigan, Caleb DeBoer. Interesting times we're living in right now in terms of coaching, where we are right now. A lot of the legends are going away. The new guys are coming in here. Who knows what happens next? So finally, we get to the news that we've been waiting to hear since the beginning of the week. Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots are moving on. They're separating after 24 seasons. Bill Belichick, of course, had one of the longer tenures in the NFL. Got his team to 6 Super Bowl championships, 9 Super Bowl appearances, 13 AFC Championship game appearances. You know, say what you will about the guy in general. I know a lot of us here in Pittsburgh have a lot of negative things to say about him, especially considering that he knocked our Steelers out 3 times in a row, but not 3 times in a row, but 3 times during the time they made the AFC Championship game. But guy had a lasting legacy in the NFL. Like, this is something that we're not really going to see a whole lot more of, even though Bill Belichick's going to move on to another team. It could be a team that just literally lost to, as I'm recording this, the Dallas Cowboys lost another playoff game to a 7th seed of all teams. The Green Bay Packers just came in and just dismantled them all together. And it would not be surprising if Bill Belichick becomes the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, because they were saying that earlier in the day that he's watching the playoff teams closely, and there might be an opportunity for him to, if somebody decides to leave it, to get fired to either get fired or move on, Bill Belichick could step into one of those roles. I would not be surprised if they're already starting to think about that in Dallas right now. But in the meantime, who do they get to replace Bill Belichick? Well, they get Gerard Mayo, who's been a Patriots defensive coach for the last 4 years. He's been with the Patriots ever since 2008 as a player. It'll be his first head coaching position at any level, which begs the question of, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, even Nick Saban, replacing legends, because these guys were all legends. Each of them got championships for their specific teams, and it's going to be really, really hard to follow in those footsteps. It was really hard to do that for a lot of things. I mean, look at the Dallas Cowboys. Look what Jimmy Johnson had to go through when Tom Landry left. Like, that was big shoes to fill. It took a while for him, but he eventually made his mark. That's the same thing that happened with Green Bay. Green Bay, hell, Pittsburgh, Chuck Noll, and Bill Cowher. But Bill Cowher had the tough task of replacing Chuck Noll. And then when Mike Tomlin came in, he had the tough task of replacing Bill Cowher. And it's worked out pretty well for them, but it's very few and far between. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Gerard Mayo brings to the table. Like, I had heard that they had already kind of agreed early on, before the season even began, that Belichick was looking at Mayo as a potential replacement. Probably was thinking Josh McDaniels, but that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. He won't even get to... I would be shocked if he gets another head coaching position after the hell he's brought to the two teams that he had coached. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out with Gerard Mayo in general. In terms of Los Angeles, the Chargers, anybody's got to be better than Brendan Staley. I'm surprised it took him that long to get rid of him. So could be Jim Harbaugh. That seems like to be the front runner right now. He's supposedly going to meet with him next week, maybe. So possibility is there. Looks like Antonio Pierce will become the head coach, pending if nothing crazy happens. He rightfully deserves it. I think Mark Davis learned the lesson after getting rid of Rich Bisaccia. Hey, maybe I should keep this guy. Maybe I should keep this interim head coach who's actually done a lot better than the guy I hired beforehand. And yeah, they didn't make the playoffs this year, but 5-4, and you beat the Kansas City Chiefs in their home. I think Antonio Pierce has more than deserved an opportunity to at least coach a full season with the Raiders. Let's see what he can do with a roster that he creates. I want to see what that looks like. And the Carolina Panthers, well, I don't know if I really want to be involved with the Carolina Panthers if David Tepper is there, because that's a guy who will get angry at the drop of a hat and basically will fire anybody if they don't reach your insane predictions beforehand. But overall, it's going to be a very interesting offseason, and we may not even be done with the picks, with like the firings in general. Once again, we have the playoffs to look at here. Cowboys may be getting rid of somebody. The Steelers, Mike Tomlin potentially could be looking at retirement or stepping away for a year. So we'll see what happens there. That could be very interesting if they don't win against Buffalo tomorrow, or assuming the game's going to keep going. I mean, at this point, I'd have to think it'd keep going because they would have announced a rescheduling at this point. But yeah, there's a possibility Mike Tomlin could be out. There's a possibility Nick Sirianni could be out. Hard to believe after getting his team to the Super Bowl last year. It's amazing how a bad season changes everything. And we may not be done with these firings yet. This could be one of the most front-loaded head coaching opportunities for the NFL this season. So definitely stick around for that. It's going to get very interesting as the weeks of the offseason go on. But with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. So really, kind of out of nowhere, a couple weeks ago, I kind of had this thought of fast food French fries. Like, how do I rank fast food French fries? I know it's kind of weird to have that conversation with myself about that. Like, French fries should be French fries. Like, you would think that French fries should be French fries. Like, it's basically the same thing at every place, you would think. But there are different types of French fries. Like, you have your typical French fries that you get at fast food places, and you have waffle fries, like the ones you get at Chick-fil-A. You have curly fries. You have all these different types of fries in all these different places. And it's just like for some reason, I kind of thought to myself, which one is probably my favorite fast food French fry of all? Like, I had this kind of idea of kind of ranking my personal favorite French fries in general. Well, so I went online to see what other people think of them. Some people, and I see one of them right here on this website called Tasting Table. They have the best fast food French fries is the Wendy's French fries. You know, Wendy's a long time ago they basically changed over to sea salt French fries, which I will admit they are pretty good. Like, I wouldn't consider them the best overall, but I would say that they actually are pretty good too. I see that some of them also use, like, you know, they put their fries in like chocolate frosties and all that, which seems weird, but it's like one of those things with, like, you know, pizza and pineapple. Like, some people, like a lot of people would look at that and go, "Why the hell are you doing that?" But some people like that as well. But I thought about it, and in terms of like my favorite French fries in general, my top 5 favorite French fries in fast food places in general, if I had to choose, it would go like this. Number 1, probably Five Guys, which I don't usually have Five Guys as much anymore. We used to have a Five Guys down the road from where I live, but they changed that over to a Chipotle, which is a freaking shame. I used to love going to that Five Guys restaurant, and there's one in Monrovia that I very rarely go to because it's so far away from my usual walking area. But Five Guys, man, they have really great fries. Like, if you've never been to Five Guys, it's basically this. Five Guys, they have these naturally cut French fries. You go inside there, and they tell you where fries are from specific places. They all come from, like, different areas of the country. Like, some of them will come from Boise, Idaho. Some will come from, like, different other places as well. They're seasoned to perfection in Cajun seasoning, and they never short you on the fries. They always pile them inside in this white cup whenever you get something like a burger in there. Their burgers are so damn delicious. Like, it's two burgers in one burger in general, and it's so friggin' delicious. I miss Five Guys so much, having it close to where I live. I mean, I could walk there on my way on Saturdays when I'm up in Monroeville, but it's further away, and it would just have to depend on what the traffic situation is to get over there. But yeah, Five Guys is probably my favorite French fries in general, but it's one that I very rarely get to have anymore. If I had to pick, like, the big 3 French fries in general, my favorite ones would probably have to be Burger King. I mean, Burger King's their fries are much more, how do I put this? They're a little bit thicker than the ones that they have at McDonald's, but they're not like steak fries though. They're like, it's the right amount. It's like pillowy on the inside, crisp on the outside. And it works well whenever you get a Whopper or a chicken sandwich from there. Like, if I had to pick between McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King's probably my favorite one of the bunch. That would probably be 2 in general. My second favorite French fries over Five Guys. 3, Chick-fil-A. The waffle fries, like, they go great with the chicken sandwich in general. 4th, probably McDonald's. I like getting the basket of fries every once in a while. If I don't want to go in there and get, like, a big lunch or something, that'll usually do me well with a basket of fries. And their fries there are usually very, very, very good. 5th, my 5th one. Which one would I want to say for 5? Maybe Red Robin. Red Robin makes a lot of good French fries. Like, whenever you go there, they give you like a unlimited fries option. It's like with the drink too. Like, you can get your drink refilled for free, and they give you fries for free as well. But probably my least favorite fries in general. Probably the one that I really like. It's not that I don't hate these fries. Like, ever since KFC switched over to the secret recipe fries, I mean, don't get me wrong, the secret recipe fries they have there are good, but here's the biggest problem with the secret recipe fries that I've realized after eating them so many times. You really have to eat those first before you can actually delve into the chicken and the coleslaw and whatever else you get with it, because honestly, if you let those fries sit there for a while, they don't really taste as good as they do if they do coming out for the first time ever. So that's why I usually, whenever I order something from KFC, I usually just go for the fries first. I know it's not something you're really supposed to do, but if you want the best tasting overall, it's the best overall taste of those fries in general, that's one you kind of have to go and get first. Yeah, like I said, in terms of my favorite French fries in general, probably Five Guys 1, Burger King 2nd, Chick-fil-A 3rd. What did I have for 4th? McDonald's 4th, and then Wendy's. I think I had Wendy's 5th. Did I have Wendy's 5th? Yeah, that's what it was. Five Guys, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Wendy's. I believe that's what I had beforehand, but from my list beforehand. But I don't know why that popped up in my head. I just thought to myself, what are my favorite fries in general? Because I'm not much of other fries in general. I don't really have much of it to say on the matter. I don't eat Taco Bell, so I don't really go for the Taco Bell nacho fries. Like, I'm not much of a Taco Bell person. Steak and Shake is one I rarely have had. The few times I remember it, I thought they were just kind of fine, juicing French fries. Sonic has had a couple of Sonic has some decent French fries overall. Who else was there? Dairy Queen's one that's kind of like, yeah, Dairy Queen I've had before, but it's nothing. It doesn't leave much of a lasting impact. But the ones I always have to go with if I have to choose the best French fries in general, Five Guys, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Wendy's. Really kind of a pointless thing here, but I thought it was just kind of amusing to bring that up here, just to have some time filler here. But let's go ahead and move on to our next story. So around Thanksgiving, on one of our free preview shows, I talked about what Wheel of Fortune used to be like back in the days when before it became the Wheel of Fortune that we know it as, when it was Shopper's Bazaar. And like I said, I get on these game show kicks every once in a while. I like watching these classic game shows. Mostly at work, because we have a Roku TV in our break room, and I usually turn on a classic Wheel of Fortune episode from back in the day. Or just like any classic game show in general, is during my break, so I can check that out. But so while I was doing this, I figured, since I talked about Shopper's Bazaar already, why not talk about what Wheel of Fortune became after Pat Sajak left the first time he left Wheel of Fortune? Because remember, back in 1989, the daytime version of Wheel of Fortune, he left the show to take on the new late night show over at CBS, the Pat Sajak Show, which unfortunately did not last very long and was pretty much axed after just one season. But when he went on to do that, Wheel of Fortune basically had to replace its daytime show. Even though Pat Sajak was still doing the nighttime show, they replaced him with a new host, and that new host was a former place kicker for the San Diego Chargers in Rolf Benirschke. That name alone, I don't know, like that name alone, I think kind of like turned people away pretty quickly. Like, Chuck Woolery, Pat Sajak, and then your next host is Rolf Benirschke. I mean, that name just doesn't, I don't know, the name just doesn't sound good in general. But he was named the new host of Wheel of Fortune, the daytime version, in 1989. It was, and so basically on the week that Pat Sajak started his new show on January 9th, Rolf Benirschke became the host of Wheel of Fortune, and unfortunately that version of Wheel of Fortune did not last very long, and in fact was canceled after not even 6 months on the air. The show ended in June of 1989, essentially ending 14 years when it was part of NBC's daytime lineup in general. And I look back on this, and I tried to see, like, was it really as bad as people made it out to be? So I watched one episode that they have on here on YouTube, and I wanted to check it out again just to see if it was as bad as people let on. So I'm not gonna play the whole episode, but I'm just gonna let you listen in on Rolf Benirschke as the host and let you judge for yourself. Take a listen to this.
And now here's the new host, Rolf Benirschke. Thanks, MG, and welcome to Wheel of Fortune. I am excited because I'm the new host of this show, and because I get to introduce Vanna White. Vanna, come out and say hello.
So kind of right out of the gate, I sense that there was a lot of nervousness with him. I think it's too easy to really see it, and I think it's understandable because this was his very first show, and he never hosted anything before this. So it made me kind of wonder what they saw in Rolf Benirschke to make him a game show host in general. Because it sounded like it started at the beginning of the show. He was very nervous early on, but then again, like I said, it's his first time hosting a show like this, and but as the show went on, I think he did get a little bit better as the show went on, as you'll listen here.
Now, here's the first puzzle. It's the thing. Just before the show, we do now, Mr. Peter would start the game. Kevin, you won, so you get to spin first. Good luck, everybody. 750. I'd like a 2. Okay, you can have 1, I believe. There it is. I'd like to spin.
So yeah, you can hear it there a little bit. Like, as the show went on, he did get a little bit more confident in saying things like the person asks, "Can I have a tea?" And it's like, you can have a tea. It kind of gives him like this friendlier vibe than somebody like Pat Sajak would. So, but let's go ahead and continue listening on later on into the show.
No, I'm sorry, we can't give you an F. Robin. Okay. 700. An L? There are 2 L's. Oh, you have $1,400 in the bank.
I'll buy a vowel, an I.
Yes, there are 3 I's. Good purchase.
But there were definitely those times after he had gotten adjusted to his role as host where you could still hear a little bit of nervousness in him. Like, this is an opening from another episode of Wheel of Fortune. Just take a listen to how he says the opening here.
Friday. Kind of excited. We made it through another week, getting ready for the weekend. But did you see what Vanna was wearing? Looks like she's already ready for the weekend. Vanna, come on out and say hello.
Yeah, it's not Ed Kooky Burns level of bad, but it's pretty up there, and you can see why this kind of died out pretty quickly at NBC. I don't think he was a bad host in general, but I think he just had big shoes to fill. 2, it was his first time ever hosting a show in general, and yeah, I could see why people were kind of taken off by him. I mean, he was trying his best though, but I could see why people kind of left from that. But unfortunately, NBC, like I said, they canceled the show, and then right up immediately, CBS picked the show up. And they had Bob Goen come in as the new host. Which Bob Goen, if you don't know who Bob Goen is, most of you know him from his work on Entertainment Tonight. But he also did a ton of other. He's been a prolific game show host for several years, and he hosted the last couple of seasons of Wheel of Fortune when it was on CBS, and started out pretty strongly. I mean, it's like Bob Goen, I think, has proven time and time again he's got enough power to MC a big show like this, but. As you'll see as we'll go along here, there was some things. There was still a lot of things wrong with the show in general that really wasn't his fault in particular. But let's go ahead and take a listen to some of this.
Look at this studio filled with show. Yes, from Television City in Hollywood, it's Wheel of Fortune. And now, here's your host, Bob Goen.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hello there, players. And hello to you at home. Welcome, one and all. Boy, it is great to be here at our new home at CBS. Although some things may change, some things always stay the same. Thank goodness for that. Meet our hostess, Miss Vanna White.
So also kind of around this time, because they were also doing that on the nighttime show, the thing where you use your money that you won in the game to get prizes and all that, to select prizes for overall, was taken away, and everybody was playing for cash throughout most of the game. It was only at the end of the show when you'd be playing the final round for like this big extravagant prize, and they'll talk about it here as I'm about to show you. So let me go ahead and see if I can find that right here.
Columbus. And I also enjoy ballroom dancing and most things having to do with music.
Is that right? Well, on the wheel in this round is $500. Number players, we are playing for cash.
So yeah, they're playing for cash, but I want you to notice something on the wheel here. You notice something that's different when they moved to CBS? Listen again to what Bob Goen said. I want you to take a close listen to this.
Let's spin our wheel. Top dollar value on the wheel in this round is $500.
Top dollar value on the wheel is $500. On the daytime version, the top dollar value in the first round was $750. And if you look on this wheel here, you'll see a lot of lower numbers compared to what they were on NBC. Like the biggest one in the opening round is $500, but you see spaces for like $50, $100, $75. It's just like, if you were auditioning for Wheel of Fortune back in the 1980s, hoping to go on the big nighttime show, you were going to win all these big prizes, and then you end up going on the daytime version of the show, where you're playing for less than $50 for a letter, don't you think you would be a little peeved? I know I certainly would be, because it's just like I'm going on the show to win big money. What am I going to do with $50? I mean, honestly, like, Like, if you look closely at this wheel here, I'm looking at $200, $125, $75, $200, $50, $125. It's just like, was there a thing when they moved over to CBS where they basically just said, you know, you're not going to have as much money as you did on the other show, so we have to cut the budget down so much that you're going to have to take spots on the wheel for like less than $100. It's just like, it feels really weird that they did that, and that continued throughout the rest of the show's run, and it ran for 3 more seasons on CBS. So, I mean, this wasn't something that necessarily killed the show pretty quickly, but I would think that if I had the opportunity of going on Wheel of Fortune and I'm going on this version where I'm receiving lesser and lesser amounts of money, I'm thinking to myself, really, that's what I'm going on here to play for that little money? Just out of curiosity, let me see what it's like for the rest of the rounds. Maybe it's just the first round in general. So I did look through the rest of the episode. The top dollar value on the wheel is $1,250. On the nighttime version, most versions of Wheel of Fortune that you know, $5,000 is the top dollar value on the wheel at some point during the game. At least in the early years it is. But like I said, imagine you're going on Wheel of Fortune and the most you can play for is $1,250 for each letter. Like, I feel like I would be pretty gypped about that one, but like I said, man, like, that's what it was back in the day. That's what it was at CBS, and it didn't hurt the show in general. It ran for 3 seasons, which, 3 years on there is a pretty long time for that, especially with the lower prices and everything, lower dollar values and everything. But like I said, that daytime version lasted 3 more years than I thought it would have, especially when you consider what happened with the Rolf Benirschke era. But just gives you kind of an idea of like what Wheel of Fortune used to be like when Pat Sajak left the first time, and it's going to be interesting. And obviously, it's going to be it's not going to be too different when he leaves this time around, except that he's just no longer going to be on the show. Is going to be doing the show that he's been doing for the past 40 years now. It's going to be Ryan Seacrest, but I'm pretty sure it's more as I'm willing to believe that the dollar values will not change as they are now, because that would be kind of ridiculous if they did it that way. But yeah, just wanted to kind of talk about that because I talked about Shopper's Bazaar in November, and I thought, why not continue that on here since that one did pretty well. And who knows? Maybe I give you a little bit of a history lesson about what Wheel of Fortune was like without Sajak back in its prime days. But yeah, with that said, let us go ahead and talk about some recommendations for this week. Now, once again, it's not a big new release week. There is one big new release coming out, and that's Trolls Band Together. But as you remember, when I saw the movie, I was not the biggest fan of that one, so that's one I'm probably not going to rush out too quickly to get. But there are a couple of notable Blu-ray debuts coming out this week, specifically Coming Home with Jane Fonda and Jon Voight, won 3 Oscars, and is making its Blu-ray debut on Kino Lorber. There's a new Criterion release for Lone Star, directed by John Sayles, which came out in 1996. Walk Hard's getting a really nice looking Walmart steelbook coming up this week from Mill Creek. I already pre-ordered it, so it should be coming in the mail this week, and I'll have it on this week's Movie Stop episode. But other than that, though, in terms of new physical media releases, it's not really a whole lot. There are a bunch of STX titles that are getting brand new releases through Lionsgate, but none too spectacular or that interesting. I think only the biggest new one I see here that probably would be worth getting, I think, is The Edge of 17 with Haley Atwell. But other than that, though, every other one here, nothing I'm rushing out to get. But in terms of like other like TV shows on streaming shows, of course, the big new one is Ted on Peacock. I've only seen a couple of episodes so far, but I love it, man. Ted's back. It's of course the continuation of the movie starring Seth MacFarlane, and I've only seen a couple of episodes. I've only seen a couple of the clips, but man, I'm laughing really hard at what I'm seeing so far. It's like, welcome back, Ted. We missed you so much, and hopefully the rest of the series is as funny as the first couple of episodes have been, and some of the clips I've seen, because it's been really funny so far. But other than that, though, that's gonna wrap this week's episode of the Reviewing Network Live up. So thank you guys for checking out this episode. If you want to see more of what we do here on this channel, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Check out some of the episodes we've done beforehand. And yeah, I hope you've been enjoying these, and we're going to continue this into the new year as well. So thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys next week for the next episode. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, we are out.